Welcome back to a special edition of Tucker Carlson Tonight. It's hard to believe that it's been more than 2 weeks since 13 American service members and about 100 Afghan civilians were killed by a suicide bomber outside Kabul's international airport. The news cycle and the Biden administration, well, they want you to move on. And in many ways, they're doing everything they can to make sure you do. They use COVID and vaccine mandates to distract from the chaos that they've created. But we all remember the scenes they want us to forget. Afghans desperately clinging to a U.S. Air Force plane on the airport runway. Afghan mothers passing their children to American soldiers over an airport wall. And videos of the Taliban showcasing their new state-of-the-art military arsenal, bought and paid for by you, the U.S. taxpayer. Everything we saw unfold, it wasn't only preventable, it still is. And worse than that, we allowed it to happen. We're not doing anything to change the outcome here. At any moment, Joe Biden and his officials in his administration could stop this. They can still use their power, diplomatic, economic, security, military. But instead, they choose to blame our allies, many of whom are still there and still fighting.
Afghanistan political leaders gave up and fled the country. The Afghan military collapsed, sometime without trying to fight. We trained and equipped an Afghan military force of some 300,000 strong, incredibly well equipped, a force larger in size than the militaries of many of our NATO allies. We gave them every tool they could need.
And then you took them away in one moment. U.S. air support, the contractors for the Afghan Air Force, everything. And it's just simply not true that all of these people just gave up and fled the country. The Afghan government forces that the U.S. trained are still fighting the Taliban and other Islamic terrorists, including the Afghan al-Qaeda, in a region just north of Kabul called the Panjshir Valley. It's the last standing province in the entire country that these terrorists do not control. And the Taliban, what they do control is the information flow. They want you to think it's all been conquered, it's all over. While the democratically elected head of the country, Amrullah Saleh, who was vice president at the time the president fled and became acting president, they want you to believe that he, along with all the forces that soldiers in this country have fought beside, and all of our allies there for decades, have not been abandoned by Joe Biden. They're there continuing to fight the Islamic terrorists who were responsible for 9/11 with no help from the U.S. at all, while the enemy they face is supported by their allies, Pakistan, China, Iran, and others. So while our senior military leaders at home question their will, they have been abandoned.
The Afghan security forces had the capacity, and by that I mean they had the training, the size, the capability to defend their country. This comes down to an issue of will and leadership. And no, I did not, nor did anyone else, see a collapse of an army that size in 11 days.
Will and leadership. It's interesting, curious to see if General Milley actually knows what either of those things mean. Because not only did we abandon our allies, the U.S. is actively working with their enemy, which until a very short time ago was our enemy too. The Taliban, if you consider what Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said just a few days ago, is now our best friend on the eve of the 20th anniversary of 9/11. Think about that, the 20th anniversary of 9/11. Is this how you want your leaders to speak about terrorists who killed thousands of Americans?
Our engagement with the Taliban and with a government, interim or long-term, will be for purposes of advancing the national interest, advancing our interests, the interests of our partners. We have and we will find ways to engage the Taliban. The nature of a Taliban-led government's relationship with us, with the international community, will depend entirely on its actions.
How is turning a terrorist group into a nation state in the interests of the United States? That's a question that just isn't asked. And yesterday, a spokeswoman for Joe Biden's National Security Council, named Emily Horn, well, she praised the Taliban, who've been murdering their way across Afghanistan, for their, quote, cooperation in allowing U.S. citizens to board a commercial flight out of Afghanistan, saying, quote, they have shown flexibility and they've been businesslike and professional in our dealings with them in this effort. They haven't allowed green card holders and our Afghan allies, who are most vulnerable and high risk, to leave. But who exactly is the White House praising as businesslike and professional? It's a question that is worth asking. So we looked into it. Shortly after the Taliban entered Kabul in mid-August, its deputy commander, a man named Siraj Haqqani, who also runs his own terrorist organization known as the Haqqani Network, he put his uncle, Khalil al-Rahman Haqqani, in charge of security in the Afghan capital. So with the exception of the airport itself, which was being secured and operated by U.S. forces, the rest of Kabul and the country is what Joe Biden called behind enemy lines. Well, that was under control of the Haqqani Network. So who are they? Well, according to the U.S. government, the Haqqani Network is a foreign terrorist organization. The United Nations agrees with that. This network has been on the United Nations Security Council sanction list since 2012. And in fact, Siraj Haqqani and many members of his family are among the most wanted terrorists in the world. The FBI has been looking for him for some time. They want him so badly, they put a $10 million bounty on his head and a $5 million bounty on his uncle's head. Well, you know, we've got news for the FBI tonight. If they're still looking for Siraj Haqqani and his uncle, they can look up the address of the Interior Ministry in Kabul, because Siraj Haqqani has been rewarded for his murderous efforts by being made the country's new Interior Minister. And he's in charge of all of the borders and the security. So if you're looking to claim that reward, perhaps you'd want to donate it to the Taliban's humanitarian crisis, because that's the excuse that the U.S. is using to send, yes, you guessed it, more of your tax dollars to terrorists. These people aren't on these lists for no reason. They've killed people. They've killed a lot of people. Many of them U.S. soldiers, hundreds by some conservative estimates, also hundreds of NATO forces. They've killed thousands of Afghan civilians and, according to most estimates, more than 10,000 Afghan soldiers and policemen. So it might surprise you to learn that these are the very same people the Biden administration turned to for help in the last desperate days of the evacuation that they handled so poorly. The Biden administration actually asked the terrorists of the Haqqani Network to secure safe passage to the airport for U.S. citizens and green card holders. One source told us there's no way that the commercial flights with American citizens that just left Kabul airport could have done so without the coordination and approval from the Haqqani Network, which is also illegal under U.S. law, negotiating with and speaking to and supporting terrorists. But is it any wonder that 13 Americans and so many Afghan civilians were killed at that airport when that's your security partner? It doesn't seem to bode well for the future of counterterrorism operations in Afghanistan, because, as you will remember, the very same people are the ones the Biden administration says are going to help the U.S. as a counterterrorism partner. General McKenzie has so much confidence in these people who've been killing Americans for the last 2 decades that he said we're sharing information with them now, too.
The other thing we do is we share versions of this information with the Taliban so that they can actually do some searching out there for us. And we believe that some attacks have been thwarted by them. And then we also use the Taliban as a tool to protect us as much as possible. So we share a common purpose. As long as we've kept that common purpose aligned, they've been useful to work with. They've cut some of our security concerns down.
A common purpose with terrorists It's just hard to believe that we even got to this point. And now tonight, we can confirm that there is one type of intelligence the U.S. has left behind in the hands of the Taliban. This is the biometric database and the scanners that come with that capability that are called interagency identity detection equipment. There are multiple reports of these devices being used not by the U.S. in Kabul when people were boarding those planes, but by the Taliban and the Islamic terrorists that they work with at the checkpoints that we were sending our American citizens and vulnerable Afghan allies through to get to the airport to try to leave the country. Sensitive biometric data like iris scans and fingerprints of every single person who worked with American and NATO forces. These are people the Taliban consider collaborators, and those devices enable the Taliban and al-Qaeda to hunt them down anywhere. They can find anyone who worked with and for the U.S. or the Afghan government, or anyone who believes in the idea of freedom. They can find them anywhere they are. These individuals are the ones who are relying on us, who turned to us to help after we turned and relied on them. We don't have to imagine what their fates will be.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.